Does your city have a Little Italy? Well, if you live in any of these places, then the answer is yes. There are many neighborhoods known as Little Italy in the United States, but for as many that have stood the test of time, there have been even more that have disappeared. Of course, there's Little Italy, New York City, the most well known one, Little Italy, Omaha, Nebraska, Little Italy, Cleveland, Ohio, and my favorite one to visit, Little Italy, San Diego, California. In this video, I'll tell you why these places exist, where you can find them, and what the original Little Italies look like in the present day. Many Italians immigrated to America in the 19th century due to a wide range of economic, social, and political factors. Italy, particularly the southern region of Italy, faced severe economic challenges in the 19th century. The unification of Italy in 1861 was a tumultuous process that created political instability and social unrest. Southern Italy experienced much violence and upheaval, prompting people to leave in search of a more stable environment. But it wasn't just political unrest. Southern Italy's agricultural sector was hit hard by a series of natural disasters, including droughts and floods, which devastated crops and the livelihoods of hundreds of thousands of Italians. Italy also experienced a population boom in the 19th century, leading to overcrowded living conditions and insufficient resources to support the growing population. This overpopulation exacerbated the economic problems and made it difficult for many Italians to find work, so they had to look elsewhere. And during this time, it turned out that the ongoing booming industrialization of the United States created a high demand for labor, particularly in construction, mining, and manufacturing. American companies actively recruited workers from Europe, including Italy, offering the promise of employment and better wages. The opening of Ellis Island, New York in 1892 and relatively liberal immigration policies of the United States at the time facilitated the arrival of millions of immigrants. As some Italians successfully emigrated to the United States and established themselves, they sent word back to their families and friends about the opportunities available in the New World. This led to a chain migration effect where entire communities would follow the earlier immigrants in a cycle. This chain migration ultimately led to the creation of Italian enclaves, most notably the neighborhood of Little Italy in New York City. The neighborhood is located in Lower Manhattan, bounded on the west by Tribeca and Soho, on the south by Chinatown, more on that later, and on the east by the Bowery and the Lower East Side, and on the north by Nolita. It was once a larger area encompassing as far south as Worth Street and as far north as Houston Street, but is now confined to a small section on Mulberry Street north of Canal Street. The neighborhood began to take shape in the 1870s and 1880s when New York City experienced an influx of Italian immigrants who settled in various streets according to their regions of origin. And it was really organized. Italian immigrants from Naples settled on Mulberry Street, immigrants from Puglia and Calabria settled on Mott Street, immigrants from Sicily settled on Elizabeth Street, and immigrants from northern Italy, especially Genoa, settled on Baxter Street. Now, it's important to mention that Little Italy is not a monolith in terms of ethnic neighborhoods, as New York City is home to neighborhoods such as Little Brazil, the Ukrainian Village, Chinatown, and used to be home to a Little Germany neighborhood until the early 1900s. By 1910, Little Italy peaked with nearly 10,000 Italians, making up over 90% of the 14th ward's population. During Little Italy's population boom, Danish-American social reformer Jacob Riis was notable for describing Little Italy as the foul core of New York's slums. This was because Little Italy was a hotbed for organized crime led by the Italian mafia. As early as 1890, Little Italy was home to some of the most infamous crime bosses, such as Ignazio Lupo, Paul Kelly, and eventually John Gotti of the Gambino crime family. Over time, as Italians achieved financial success, many moved to more spacious areas, influencing labor movements, particularly in the garment industry. Post-World War II, many Little Italy residents relocated to Brooklyn, Staten Island, Long Island, Westchester, and New Jersey. Meanwhile, Chinese immigrants began to expand into the area, facilitated by the 1965 Immigration Act. By 2004, Chinatown had significantly encroached upon Little Italy, and real estate prices surged, making it difficult for longtime residents and businesses to remain. The September 11 attacks further impacted the area economically, but also spurred efforts to preserve its legacy. Two things that, as it turned out, could not happen at the same time. Today, New York City's Little Italy is largely a tourist destination with few remaining Italian residents. It was officially merged with Chinatown into a single historic district in 2010. Despite its shrinking size, Little Italy's legacy includes contributions to Italian-American cuisine and traditions, such as sausage and peppers, the rainbow cookie, and the Feast of Seven Fishes. But Little Italy, New York City is not alone. As I stated at the start of this video, there are many Little Italys dotted throughout the US, with similar stories to New York City's. Of course, it wasn't just New York City in need of labor during the Industrial Revolution. Many more US cities needed labor and implemented policies to make their cities attractive to the mostly Italian immigrants rapidly flowing into the country. Thus was the case across the country in San Diego, California. Now, San Diego's Little Italy is located just northwest of its downtown core, and in my opinion, it's the other half that makes up San Diego's active downtown. Of course, there's the East Village, Bankers Hill, and the Embarcadero, among others, but where downtown really shines is in the Gaslamp District and Little Italy. Recently, the Gaslamp has just exploded into something resembling Austin's 6th Street District. It's half drunken millennials and half drunken tourists on any given weekend night. Quite a mix there. But Little Italy is different. Not to say that there aren't any tourists or drunken millennials in Little Italy, but it's just a different vibe. Little Italy, San Diego was originally a predominantly Italian and Portuguese fishing neighborhood. From the 19th century through the 1970s, Italian Americans, chiefly from the Italian Riviera and Sicily, led the enterprise in the building of the boats that founded the American tuna fishing fleet and canning industry based in San Diego, the tuna capital of the American West Coast. The first large tuna cannery, the Pacific Tuna Canning Company, was founded in 1911, and by the mid-1930s, the canneries employed more than 1,000 people. However, due to rising costs and foreign competition, the last of the canneries closed down in the early 1980s. In the present day, Little Italy's Italian heritage can still be felt throughout. The neighborhood hosts a weekly farmers market known as the Mercato, which is held at the Piazza della Famiglia, a pedestrian-only plaza that acts as a place for people to unwind, enjoy the Little Italy fountain, as well as the Little Italy food hall, a personal favorite in the city. The heart of Little Italy is India Street, the main commercial corridor. This street runs through a highly walkable 48 square block area that features a mix of high-density, mixed-use buildings and historic single-family bungalows. Public art, plazas, galleries, antique stores, and numerous Italian restaurants with outdoor seating line India Street. Unlike Little Italy, New York City, Little Italy, San Diego is experiencing significant development with multiple public improvement projects and new high-rise and mid-rise buildings either approved for construction or under construction. The southern part of Little Italy is more densely populated and predominantly consists with these high-rise and mid-rise structures, while the northern part is less dense, mostly because it lies adjacent to San Diego International Airport, an already difficult landing for even the most experienced pilots. The neighborhood also benefits from a business improvement district and a community benefit district, both maintained by the Little Italy Association, who are a public benefit corporation established to oversee the area's revitalization and beautification. Additionally, Little Italy is home to the Italian Cultural Center of San Diego, a nonprofit organization with 600 members dedicated to promoting Italian culture and language. The center offers a variety of cultural events, workshops, lectures, and classes year-round, taught by native speakers with extensive teaching experience. So it seems like it's a tale of two Little Italys. The first one in New York City on the cultural and economic decline, and on the flip side, Little Italy San Diego, which maintains its heritage while at the same time developing into a more robust and diverse community, while at the same time still staying in touch with its roots. But if we were to answer the question of are Little Italys across the US dying, we'll need a bigger sample size than just the two we've discussed. Philadelphia is home to the second largest Italian American population in the United States, and while they don't have their own neighborhood called Little Italy, the city has a few neighborhoods that look, feel, and in effect are Little Italys. Like this area in South Philadelphia on 9th Street between South Street and East Passyunk Ave. The neighborhood is simply known as 9th Street or Italian Market, and is a section of the city of Philadelphia that was outside the original boundaries of William Penn's planned city. Italian immigrants began to move into the area around 1885 1954, and shops along 9th Street opened up shortly after to cater to the new Italian community and have remained in the area to this day, with many of the present vendors tracing the founding of their businesses back to the first decade of the 20th century. It is far from dying and still very much Italian, being home to notable Philadelphia institutions such as Angelo's Pizzeria, Gino's Steaks, and Pat's King of Steaks, as well as so many more Italian-owned businesses including produce vendors, specialty butchers, and cheesemongers. On the flip side, Millinocket, Maine's Little Italy takes you to a cemetery on Google Maps. No subtleties found there, but upon further investigation, I found that many Italian immigrants were hired to build some of the town's landmarks, including the town mill. The town doesn't really have any sort of notable Italian population in the present day though, but Little Italy, Baltimore, Maryland has a different history, and Little Italy, Bridgeport, Connecticut too, not to mention Little Italy, Chicago, and so on. Like many neighborhoods, the Little Italys of the US in 2024 are ever changing. There is proof that at least a few of these communities show that longevity is possible if you're lucky enough and willing to adapt. And even if Little Italys fade throughout the coming decade, as has happened in the past, there's no denying what those millions of Italian immigrants meant to the construction of the United States. Their labor, often unpaid, was invaluable, and no matter what remains of it today, their work will always be underappreciated in my book. So I encourage you to do a little research into your local Little Italy and pay the area a visit. You might just catch a glimpse into a very important chapter in America's past. I'll see you next week on 4th Place.